So, y'all, I know we live in a crazy generation, man, but stuff like this has been going on for quite some time. So it's pretty refreshing to know that someone got caught, but it's under an unfortunate circumstance. By the title and thumbnail, y'all already know what to expect, man. Teen lures man on a date and then watches her BF him, man. And it's probably one of the most saddest stories because all in all, this is why like just don't mess with women who have men, who have significant others, who have these crazy relationships going on, because you just never know what they got going on at the crib. And you don't know if the stuff they got going on is toxic. Y'all don't know if the person just even fake texting you and setting you up themselves. That happened. They got the girl page. Oh, you want to link up whole time? You linking up to get robbed. Like, it's a cold world out here, man. So y'all be careful who y'all dealing with. But this is about a story of a woman who I guess was trying to go out for her man and end up unaliving somebody in the process, man. One like equals 1,000 prayers to the family who lost their life. So let's get into it and see what's going on, y'all.
When Jarrell Pryor agreed to meet a woman he connected with online, he thought it was just a first date. He had no idea it would be his last night alive. Jarrell was a proud father, a girl dad. Now that little girl has to face a world without him. No more bedtime stories, no father-daughter dances, and one day, no dad waiting at the end of the aisle to walk her into a new chapter of life. What started as a simple—
Hey, look at me. Did you follow me on Instagram yet?
Nope.
If you did not, then you need to follow me on Instagram. Come on over to Instagram. Why haven't you followed me on Instagram yet? It's on the screen right now. It's pinned below in the comments and it's in the description. So it's no way you can miss it. Come on over, man.
Night out allegedly ended in a deadly setup. Indianapolis police say Jarrell was ambushed, allegedly lured into a trap by the very woman he'd hoped to get to know. She reportedly was not alone. Detectives believe she was working with her boyfriend. An alleged plan to rob Jarrell turned violent and ended in murder. I'm Kennedy Walker, and
now you finna be in jail for life. Shake my head, man. And she was a pretty young girl. It's crazy. And this man had a beautiful daughter, man.
Walk you through the chilling final moments of Jarrell Pryor's life and the twisted betrayal that left a community searching for justice. For this story, we take you to Indianapolis, Indiana, January 2025. According to court documents obtained by Law and Crime, Jarrell Pryor's murder began with a text and ended with an alleged deadly setup. Just hours before he was killed, police say Jarrell messaged a young woman he'd met online, 19-year-old Alexis Hawkins. The message was just 3 words: when you free. The affidavit says Hawkins responded. She told him when she was available and agreed to go on a date. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. While she was allegedly texting Jarrell, Hawkins was reportedly messaging someone else on Instagram, her boyfriend, 18-year-old Brian Winston Jr. Investigators say Hawkins was working out the details of her date with Pryor while secretly coordinating with Winston behind the scenes. Jarrell had no idea, no clue that Hawkins was in a relationship or that anything could go wrong. It was just a date, and maybe, if things went well, a chance to meet up again. But police say it was never about the date, it was a trap. That night, Jarrell met Hawkins in person. They sat together in his car, and shortly before 1 a.m., Hawkins' boyfriend allegedly appeared and opened fire. Jarrell Pryor, just 26 years old, was shot and killed. A young father, now gone. His daughter, just 2 years old, left behind.
So, like, was she sneaking around and got caught? Or was this a situation where, like, he just unalived them? Because I thought, like, if this was a setup, then, you know, Muggs would have got robbed. You know what I'm saying? Got their money took or something like this. But for the guy to just walk up to the car, unalive him, it sounded like that she was on some sneaky stuff and he got caught. I mean, she got caught, and unfortunately, he took it out on somebody that didn't owe him any loyalty. Yeah, I know I tell y'all about that all the time, man. Like, people, they don't care about life nowadays. So they'd take the person's life who don't owe them any loyalty. They'll go and fight the person that your significant other is cheating on you with, more so than going at your significant other. So I honestly don't, I hope that this is not a situation where she, you know what I'm saying, set him up. And this is just a situation where she was trying to be sneaky. But It's just sad, man.
As police began their investigation, they discovered the messages between Pryor and Hawkins. They then obtained a warrant to search Hawkins' Instagram account, and what they allegedly found raised even more red flags. Investigators say she searched phrases like news today near me, and shootings Keystone, all on the day of the murder. Police also discovered that Hawkins had allegedly messaged several people asking for a ride near the location of the shooting around the time Jarrell was killed. When detectives questioned Hawkins the following week, she allegedly claimed she couldn't remember much about that night. She reportedly insisted she didn't have a weapon and told police, "No weapon to say I did anything. My fingerprints aren't on anything." When asked if her fingerprints might be found inside of Jarrell's car, Hawkins reportedly replied, "It's not going to be on no weapon, though." But the moment investigators asked about a message she sent saying she was going to make a, quote, play, Hawkins allegedly stopped talking and asked for a lawyer. She was arrested shortly after and charged with murder and robbery resulting in serious bodily injury. Winston was charged as well with murder, felony murder, and robbery. Now, Jarrell's family is left to pick up the pieces. His parents, once looking forward to watching their son become the man and father he aspired to be, are now raising the little girl he left behind. His mother, Tamika Wiley, told WXIN, "I'm broken inside." And just weeks ago, Jarrell's parents celebrated their granddaughter's 3rd birthday, a milestone that should have been filled with joy, laughter, and her father's love. Instead, it was a day marked by absence. No Jarrell, no hugs from dad, just a little girl too young to understand why her dad never came home. Justice may come in a courtroom, but for this family, the real sentence is living without Jarrell. And joining me to talk more about this is legal expert Andy Baldwin. Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's just jump right in. How does a case like this typically move through the Indiana legal system once charges are filed?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is these 2 defendants are going to have to get lawyers. And so there's going to be an initial hearing very quickly, and the judge is going to find out, what are you guys doing about lawyers? And then the real work begins. And because in a case like this, I think you really need to get some quick action with your lawyers and figuring out what you're going to do. A lot of times in my world, you have some time to kind of dig into the facts, dig into the evidence, and see exactly what the state has. But in a case like this, when you have 2 people that are co-defendants, you may need to go to the prosecutor to get that deal first if you are in fact guilty.
But if she not guilty, like, man, that's what I'm talking about. That no ratting stuff is just weird, man. Like, oh, don't rat. You better not rat on me. That positive, that's what she was wearing. I don't want to snitch. That's just weird. Like, what did you get out of it? What did you get out of doing that? What was the point? I don't get it.
And what are the first steps that prosecutors take after an arrest in a homicide case? What do you think they're doing right now behind the scenes?
Oh, prosecutors, once the charge is filed, they really just depend on their detectives and their investigators to take the lead role in terms of gathering evidence. And they'll be communicating, the prosecutor will be communicating with the detectives and saying, hey, maybe I want you to go get a geo-tracking off of one of the cell phones to make sure where they are, things like that. But these are, one of the detectives on this case is pretty well known throughout Indianapolis as a very good homicide detective, and he's probably doing a good job on his own of figuring out what needs to be done.
Right.
And can you walk us through just how police build a case using digital communications like texts and DMs via social media? Because I know that was crucial in this case, according to court documents.
Yeah, it's usually bad news for defense lawyers nowadays, because it's the phone that you carry around contains geo-tracking information. So if they want to know where you were at certain times, they can locate that. So that's a problem. Texting is a real problem because it gives a context of what might have been going on. So in this case, I can tell you what the detectives very quickly sent letters to Google and to Meta saying, preserve the evidence. We need the evidence preserved. But on top of that, while they're preserving that evidence, they're getting search warrants for the phone. So Alexis, who's one of the defendants, they have her phone. Brian Winston, the other defendant, he tried to break his phone, according to the probable cause affidavit, at least. And whether he was successful or not, we don't know yet. But they're going to get search warrant for those phones, so they do everything right. And then they're going to start going and digging through the Instagram and Snapchat and all the other things, direct messages from Facebook, and see if they can tell the story. If the investigation can point toward one or both of them more definitively than currently.
Now, both suspects,
Wow.
they were charged with murder, and I think Brian was the one that was charged with felony murder. What's the legal difference between murder and felony murder under Indiana law?
Yeah, so actually, it looks like it's Alexis that's charged with the felony murder. It looks like what they're trying to say is that Alexis was in a car with the deceased Jarrell Pryor, and I think from reading it's a 12-page probable cause affidavit, and what they're kind of saying is Alexis took Jarrell on a date, or he took her on a date, but she was cluing Mr. Winston, her actual boyfriend, in on where they were going to be and so forth, and that Mr. Winston then at some point in time came in knowing where they were and shot and killed Mr. Pryor. And so Alexis is charged with felony murder, and felony murder is, hey, I did not actually do the shooting, but I knew what was going on, and there was going to be a robbery. And I was a participant in the robbery, which is a felony. And when somebody gets killed during the commission of a felony, then you can be charged with felony murder, even though you had nothing to do with the shooting.
Right. That's
Could
premeditated.
this be considered even a conspiracy to commit murder, even if only one person fired the gun?
Mm-hmm.
It definitely could be. And I think they may have to amend their charging information later on. But conspiracy means you actually have to prove the murder. A felony murder is such a problem for defense lawyers, because a lot of times what happens is nobody was intending to be killed. The two participants, if Alexis and Brian, the two defendants, were actually just trying to rob the person, then in reality, they weren't committing murder. They were just committing robbery. And that's why the felony murder matters. A conspiracy to commit murder would mean that you would have to show that they actually intended to kill this young man.
And it's so weird, because if you think about it personally, like, gang, if you were sitting here doing a crime, man, I ain't gonna say let that little girl go home, because she definitely deserved to be in jail. But if she didn't have nothing to do with it and you dragging her down because you don't want to go to jail, that's one of the most selfish things you can ever do. And as a parent, bro, I would be so let down if my daughter did some stuff like that and I know she didn't have nothing to do with it. Like, girl, you really finna waste your life. Shorty look like she like 19. You finna waste your life because you don't want to snitch on a guy that you messing with. You don't want to be known as a snitch. And the fact buddy, like, yeah, don't say nothing. And thinking in his head, bro, that stuff's just sick, bro. Like, what would be wrong with people?
Yeah, I know we just talked about the charges could be upgraded to that, but is there any way that anyone could take some type of plea or even going to manslaughter, or is that just not possible?
No, that's not on
this one.
Oh, anything's possible. And I don't know how strong the case is at this point. I mean, I've read through the probable cause affidavit, and thinking like a defense lawyer does, I see that both of them have arguments that they can make. And that's why I think whoever gets to the prosecutor first, may get the better plea offer. However, you have to start with the presumption of innocence. Of course, I'm a defense lawyer, so this is what I do. And I start with the presumption of innocence. And I would be asking, if I had either Alexis or Brian, I'd be asking them maybe sooner rather than I normally would in a case, hey, it's time to kind of tell me what might have happened. Because if you have any involvement at all, I need to go to the prosecutor and cut this deal before the other side gets to the prosecutor. So, yeah, a plea agreement could be on the table for sure.
And can you walk us through just what that looks like, since, you do have a lot of experience with that? What could both sides be arguing when they go to the prosecution when they're trying to get a deal?
Yeah, the way I would argue it is that we'll take Alexis, for example. Alexis, when you read the probable cause affidavit, she denies having any involvement in the shooting, but at least on the probable cause affidavit paperwork, she does admit that she was there when the shooting happened. And that she was scared and that she ran away.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
So it could be that she points the finger at Brian Winston, her boyfriend, and says he's a jealous guy. He showed up
That's what I was thinking.
And I had no idea what was going to happen, and he shot this guy because he's a jealous guy. Brian and I, my boyfriend, we were fighting earlier in the day, so I went out with a different guy and my jealous boyfriend. And so when you go to the prosecutor, you say, this is what my client's going to say if we go to trial. And she's willing to come forward and incriminate Mr. Winston, but she wants, you start with swinging for the fences. She wants all charges dismissed. Now, Mr. Winston, on the other hand, reading through the probable cause affidavit, I don't see that there's not a whole lot of evidence, direct evidence that links him to the crime. So if I were him, I'd be saying, I'd say, I have no idea what happened here. Alexis, my girlfriend, she leads kind of a wild life. I mean, when you read the probable cause affidavit, Kennedy, you see that Alexis's mom kicked her out of the house because Alexis was hanging out with pimps, and that's her own words, the mom's words, and other kind of ne'er-do-wells. And so
that's it right there. The mama knows. So the father probably not in her life. The mama that kicked her out, man. This is like a repeated cycle. She had it coming for her one way or another, man.
Brian Winston's attorney, I'm saying, he has nothing to do with this. And Alexis is hanging out with these kind of, this wild crowd, and anybody could have killed her. And so, I don't really know what you want me. My involvement is nothing. There's nothing I can do. Now, I don't know that Brian's going to be able to say ever, like, I knew what happened with Alexis, because then it would implicate himself, unless he's going to say that Alexis told me what happened. But when Kennedy, when you read the probable cause affidavit, you're going to see that at whatever happened about 1 a.m, roughly. And about 5:30, a few hours later, when Alexis and Brian, her boyfriend, are communicating on by text, and they're saying, I love you, I'm sorry. But they don't talk anything about shooting or a shooting or anything like that. So it just seems like a boyfriend and a girlfriend that were in a fight. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this case where a defense lawyer can make some hay.
Yeah, just so many moving parts. Man. But do you think, and this is all speculation at this point, obviously, but do you think that Alexis would truly have an argument like the one you suggested, given the fact that they have her, alleged Instagram messages where she's planning everything with the boyfriend?
It's a little unclear, honestly, when you read it. You can interpret things the way that you want. And by the way, I mean, just because she looks like she's wanting to rob somebody doesn't mean it was with it. In the probable cause affidavit, here it is. There, she does send like what I would say a really bad text out about hitting a lick, or the phrase "hitting a lick" is street slang for I'm going to rob somebody and take some of their stuff. And she talks about hitting a lick. And that's pretty bad, but it doesn't mean that it was with Brian Winston. I mean, if she's hanging out with lots of bad people, she could have been hitting a lick with anybody.
Right.
And so there's another wrinkle on this case as well. And I don't see Brian and Alexis being boyfriend and girlfriend too much longer. I will tell you that much. I mean, I think somebody's going to have to turn on the other
for real
here shortly, and they'd probably be wise to do that unless they are absolutely not guilty. But there seems to be too much evidence to support that theory.
Right. I'd be surprised if they're still boyfriend and girlfriend, given the fact that they're both sitting in jail right now. I feel like that's pretty hard to maintain a relationship while that's going on. But
you would be surprised.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. Anything
is
possible. Well, both suspects were charged with robbery resulting in serious bodily injury. Can you explain what that means in this context?
Yeah, it's not very complicated. It is kind of what it says that it is. When you are committing a robbery and you hit somebody with the butt of a gun, or you shoot them, and Indiana has a definition for serious bodily injury, and if they meet the definition, the person that's hit or shot meets that definition by their injuries, then you would be charged with robbery causing serious bodily injury in the course of that robbery. And it's prosecutors are going to throw everything against the wall typically and see what sticks, because they don't know how the thing's going to shake out ultimately.
Right.
And we just spoke about the possibility of one of the suspects taking a deal, but is it possible that only one of the suspects could be convicted while the other one is just acquitted?
Yeah, that sometimes that happens. Sometimes what happens, you will, as a lawyer, you go in and you get the deal first because typically you're going to get the better deal. But I've seen it happen before where the person goes in, gets the deal, testifies against the co-defendant, and then the co-defendant walks. Or
Mm,
the case falls apart and the prosecution offers a better deal than the first person. And so then the lawyer feels kind of bad about that. Like, maybe I should have not pled that thing out. So there's a
right, right,
lot of
right.
strategy on the defense side right now. Whoever they hire, whatever public defender they end up with, those people right at the beginning of a case like this, it's very crucial to plan it out in a smart way.
Right.
How does intent factor into a case where one suspect, allegedly lured the victim and another one allegedly pulled the trigger?
But because in the felony murder law of Indiana, it doesn't matter who pulls the trigger. It just doesn't. And so you better not have been a participant in the robbery. And
Right.
that's why I think she's going to have to go with, if everything kind of shakes out, she's going to have to go with, if there's evidence, for example, that Brian, her boyfriend, showed up, there's geo tracking on his phone that shows that, then she's going to have to say, this came out of nowhere. I mean, this guy's jealous. He's angry. He came in and shot, and I left. And then when I told him later in the morning, when I told my boyfriend at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning that I loved him, that's because I'm scared. I don't want him to think. Those are the kind of things that she's going to have to say in order to not be implicated in the robbery.
Right.
But then again, like you said, Kennedy, there's text messages and internet, evidence that she's planning to hit a lick or to rob somebody. And so that becomes very difficult. Then you're going to say, well, I was going to, that's not the robbery I was talking about. It was a different robbery.
Right.
And boy, once you start slicing that onion down, it's not very good usually for the client.
How do courts authenticate that type of digital evidence, like those Instagram DMs and the Google search history?
Got a subpoena.
That's a great question. And we defense lawyers are always battling to, cause a judge to maybe throw out that evidence. But it's really not that complicated. You get Google involved. There's a business record. They prepare. They send it to the prosecutor. They send it to you. And there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. You can question who was on the device at the
That's
time.
true.
And maybe it wasn't my client that sent that stuff out. It was her sister or something like that, or a neighbor. But the authentication process is actually not that complicated.
Right.
Now, both suspects, they are teenagers. Does their age impact how they'll be tried in Indiana? Are judges or juries more lenient when it comes to young defendants in violent crimes?
It's a great question. And I think in today's world, it matters less and less about the age. As once you hit 18, I think juries, they just want to see the facts and they want to see, did the state prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt?
Right.
Judges at sentencing time, it may have impact on them in terms of whether or not they're going to be a little bit more lenient on a sentence should there be a conviction. And I'd say if anybody's going to care about the age, it might be the prosecutor. The prosecutor might, if it's a close call on whether to pull the trigger on a plea agreement, the prosecutor's looking at the case, or maybe we might lose this case. Some of the facts may not go down the right way. So it's a young person, and they can start to psychologically think maybe we can give this person a little bit of a break, and it could have some impact on the prosecutor's decision in terms of a plea.
And the prosecutors, they are trying to prove, a setup. What evidence matters the most?
I'd say that internet texting evidence, geo-tracking evidence. I think that's going to matter. I think if the one of them turns on the other, that's obviously going to matter. But that texting evidence and the evidence off of the phone is just devastating to so many defendants. It's like I want to tell people, if you're going to get into the life of crime, just get rid of your phone. It's going to be a lot easier. But then you also have to worry about video and so forth. They did find one video on this case at a liquor store that potentially showed Alexis in the vehicle with Mr. Pryor, who was the person that was killed.
Okay.
But Mr. Winston, her boyfriend, was not in that video. But
Dang.
we don't know if there was flock video of the car leaving or anywhere else. So there's still more to come, I'm sure.
If convicted, what kind of sentence could each suspect face?
They're facing 45 to 65 years.
Dang.
And in reality, that 45 is a mandatory minimum, meaning
Wow.
the best they can do is 45 years. And in Indiana, currently you have to serve 75% of that. So I'm not good with math. I don't know what that would be. I think it's 37 and a half years, something like that. So, yeah, that's why sometimes we as lawyers, what we're trying to do is get off of that mandatory minimum for murder down to a level 2 voluntary manslaughter. I mean, you never know. It could be a situation. You never know what's going to happen on a case like this. It could be self-defense, for crying out loud. Maybe the guy in the car was doing something. You just never know what's going to happen. But if you can get it knocked down to voluntary manslaughter, I was angry, she was cheating on me, and then that knocks it down to a level 2 felony, which in Indiana carries 10 to 30 years, and that's not mandatory minimum. So the lawyer is always trying to get the thing pled down if the person is actually going to be found guilty, get it pled down to something more manageable so that the person, especially when they're young, that for the defense lawyer, that's a big deal when they're young, because then you can say, gosh, you're going to get out when you're 40. But when they're 40 already and they're going to get out when they're 75 or 80, then it's like you might as well roll the dice at that point.
For real.
And that actually, I forgot to add that part is who does the age impact? In a lot of ways, the biggest impact is on the defense lawyer and the choices that you make and the risks that you're willing to take on behalf of your client.
Okay.
I'm surprised. So no one is looking at a life sentence for this?
They're not in Indiana. There's 2 above murder. You can file for we say LWOP, or life without possibility of parole, or the death penalty. And the death penalty doesn't seem to apply here. But LWOP could apply, and potentially if the prosecutor wanted to pursue that. It just never happens. The range of penalties for murder is so severe that there's really not. And for most people, it is a life. It is a life without possibility of parole.
Could the victim's family pursue a civil case in addition to a criminal trial?
Sure, they could. Normally, that doesn't happen just because they don't have any money, and but it does happen on occasion, but not typically.
Lastly, what role does public interest or media attention play in how prosecutors handle this case? There's no way for this to get tossed out of the city, right, because of the media attention?
Not anymore. I've been practicing over 30 years, and when I was much younger, it was somewhat common to get venued out because of publicity, but because of the internet and so forth, it's like, where are you going to go? You can't go anywhere. I mean, the thing gets publicity everywhere it goes. And by the way, when you get into the courtroom and you're in with a jury, what judges know and what defense lawyers and prosecutors know is you would be amazed at how many people just don't know about the case, no matter how big it is. I've been in some very high profile cases, and you get in there and the people are like, yeah, I've never heard of it. And we're all just shocked at that. And on a case like this, it's getting some publicity in Indianapolis for sure, but it's not, next week there'll be 2 other murders, and those will be the flavor of the day at that point in time in terms of publicity.
Right. Well, this is a case that we will definitely be following. Andy, thank you so much for coming on today.
That's crazy, man. This little girl, like, and the crazy thing, it sounded like there's no evidence that goes against them at the moment. It's like zero evidence that points them that she was the one that pulled the trigger, or she had anything to do with it outside of her looking up like the news. You get what I'm saying? Not really so much on how to get away with this, or there's no evidence of them talking about it beforehand, and there's no evidence that point him at the crime at the time. So if this is a cold case in a situation like this, you know what I'm saying? It's a sad truth, man, when you out here gambling in the streets, but when you get people in the streets, like when you get people into street stuff that's not into the streets, man, that's sad, bro. Just imagine dude just finds she attractive. He a father. He just be on his own stuff, going to work, ain't got no gang ties. And she just trying to get a body and get up and rank and just set up somebody who got nothing to do with it. It took this man away from his child. Right? That's a different type. Must go have different type of demons. But at the end of the day, man, God knows. And I feel like that. I mean, even if they don't handle it, man, that man above go handle it the way that it needs to be handled, man. At all times. It ain't no getting rid of that, especially when you got that behind your belt. But y'all let me know your honest thoughts and opinions on this down below, man. Like, just be safe out here. All my young cats watching, man, just be safe. Leave them girls alone who got men. Leave them alone, man, because people be willing to die about whatever nowadays. Like, especially men, women too. Just leave them alone, man. There's plenty of people out here. You can just go somebody that's single. For real.